Okay, so today we're going to look at the 4 steps to analyze, which is essentially the A part of a teal or a TERL paragraph. Now, the only difference, just as a reminder, is that a TERL paragraph with the R in it repeats the EEA. So it repeats the elaborate, the evidence, and the analyze. So it becomes a larger paragraph. You can do a teal paragraph or a TERL paragraph, that is up to you. Obviously, if you're doing a teal, TEEAL, you'll need 3 body paragraphs. Whereas if you're doing a TERL paragraph, they're going to be longer, so you'll only need 2. So I want to focus today on the EEA rather than your topic sentence and your link sentence, because this is the bulk of your essay. Most of your marks come from here. So it's really important that you don't do a slack job of this or skip it or not pay attention to this part, because this is where you get all your really good marks from in English. Right, so there are 4 steps to analyze. The first thing that you need to do is make sure that you know what evidence you're going to use and that you have an understanding of what the technique or the devices are and how they've been used by Shakespeare or the director or whoever the author is for whatever novel you're analyzing or whatever play. So you can use these 4 steps to analyze across all of your analytical writing in English, right? So it's really important. When I'm talking about devices or techniques, I'm talking about metaphors, similes, tone, characterization, soliloquy. There's some other examples here: repetition, anaphora, imagery, foreshadowing, whatever it is. So there's examples of aesthetic features here, and you have to get really familiar with those throughout senior English. There's a website here called literarydevices.net that has a great list of all of them. If you're unsure of them, it's a good time to start learning them, because they need to be in every bit of analytical writing that you write from grades 10, 11, and 12. If you want to use stylistic devices, that's fine too, but that's more about characterization, narrative viewpoint, the actual text structures and how it's been set up rather than the content of it. So you'll mainly be looking at aesthetic features. Obviously, stylistic comes in particularly when you're talking about film. So you're looking at camera angles, shot type, setting, body image, facial expression, those kind of things that you learnt in grade 9 English when you studied film. What film techniques were used, why did the director use them to position the audience. So you're going to use those skills that you built in grade 9 in this grade 10 analysis when you watch 10 Things I Hate About You. So coming back to the 4 steps to analyze, you need to identify the technique or the device. So for Midsummer, you'll be doing that with a quote from one of the characters. And in the film, you could use dialogue, you could use lighting, camera angle, shot type, body language, setting, tone, whatever it is that you're using is probably going to be a bit more of a stylistic or a visual technique, more so than relying on quotes from characters. I mean, you still can, but you would call it a dialogue, right? And you need to specify that it is dialogue in your analysis. So you need to identify the technique. Now, it doesn't really matter what order these 4 things are. They just have to be in the paragraph, in the analysis. So if you want to talk about your cultural assumptions and then go into techniques, effect, and then the impact, you can do that. It's up to you. So you choose the technique, so you identify it, you have to name it, what it is, and then you need to tell me what the effect of the technique or the device is. What has it done? What is its purpose? What does it show? Why has Shakespeare or the director, Jill Younger, used the technique? What is the purpose? You need to break down the meaning of the words. So, for example, if Helen is calling herself a spaniel, why is she doing that? So she calls herself a spaniel. Well, a spaniel's a dog. What are dogs like? Well, they're loyal, they're obedient, they're disciplined, they love you regardless. Okay, they're very forgiving. So why does she call herself that? Well, she wants him to think that all those traits that will apply to a dog also apply to her and her love. So imagine like you are explaining it to your little brother or sister in grade 7 or 8. You actually have to tell me what connotations, so what are the other thoughts, feelings, ideas, or words that come up with the particular word used in a quote, or what is the actual use of that word or phrase. Then you need to talk about any links to values, attitudes, beliefs, or assumptions. So this can be a little tricky for some people, but it's really not that difficult if you just pick one. Okay, you don't have to talk about all the kebabs, just one. So, for example, if you're talking about Helena and calling herself a spaniel and being obedient, to Demetrius and how she follows him and lauds him, you could talk about how that the attitudes and beliefs of the time, or just the beliefs of the time, were that being a submissive woman was a positive thing. That's what women's roles were during the 1600s in Shakespeare's time. The attitude towards women was that they were inferior to men and that they should be submissive and obedient to their husbands. Obviously, that is revealed by Helena and her behavior, and it reinforces the gender stereotypes of the time. Now, that challenges our view of women today because it's not how we see women anymore, but it's the values and the beliefs that were around at the time that the text was created. So when you go back to 10 Things I Hate About You and you look at that particular text, you would talk about how, for example, Kat, she challenges the expectation that girls should fall head over heels for any man that looks at her because, she is a strong, independent woman. So that's what you talk about when you're talking about values, attitudes, and beliefs. A really easy trick is to actually use the word values, attitude, belief, believes, assume, assumption, norm. Okay, those words indicate to me that you're talking about those things and you get marks there. You have to explain the impact on the audience or the reader. So how does it position them? What does it make them feel, see, think, or understand about a particular character or the way they've been constructed, or a theme or an event? Is there a message to the audience? How are you being positioned or set up to understand something? So I want to go through an example analysis of the EEA. Now, I've put in a topic sentence here just to show you what it could be, but I'm going to delete it because we don't actually need it there because we're not talking about that. We're talking about the EEA for the moment. So the topic sentence, just to give you an understanding of what the paragraph's about, it's Helena and Hermia's friendship is complicated by Helena's behavior. Okay, so if this was for my assignment, I would be talking about how friendships or relationships are represented as being difficult. Okay, I'm just going to delete it so we can focus on the EEA. All right, so the elaborate tells me a little bit more. So it tells me what I'm talking about and where. In Act 1, Helena reveals her jealousy as she compares Hermia's superior beauty to her own. Helena despairs that she must compete for Demetrius's attention, despite Hermia's rejection of him, and her desperation to win him leads her to betray Hermia's confidence. So see how that is the elaborate. It gives me a little bit more of an understanding. It tells me a little bit more about what's happening in the play before I just jump in and talk about the evidence. Right, so then I've got, in her monologue, Helena begins by lamenting that. So again, I'm not just chucking evidence in there, I'm leading into it. But in that, I'm also telling my reader of my essay what the device is. So the device is monologue. Okay, so I name that in there. In her monologue, Helena begins by lamenting. Then I put my quote in. Now, I'm not trying to use gigantic quotes that take up half of my body paragraph words because that is not going to get you good marks, okay? You want to use what's called fragments or short parts of quotes so that you have more words for your own analysis and your own explanation. So I've said what she says in her monologue is, through Athens, I am thought as fair as she. But what of that? Demetrius thinks not so. Now you can see that there's a forward slash here in my quote. And the reason why I've used that forward slash is just to show that in the actual play, it's on a separate line. So it's the next line down. If you remember to do that, great. If you don't, that's fine as well. But it is useful to do that, to show that in the play. It's on the next line. So I've got my elaborate, then I've also got my device, and I've got my quote. Okay, so the next part I need is to analyze the effect of the technique, which is really important. You can see there's quite a lot in the green here, which tells me what it actually does. So here, Shakespeare shows the audience that while Hermia and Helena are both considered beautiful, it's not enough to change the situation. Helena's rhetorical question. So I've got another device, so I'm going to name it. I may as well get extra marks by naming more devices. If I can, if they're there, do it. So Helena's rhetorical question, but what of that? Shows the audience that she recognizes that despite their equal beauty, Demetrius still loves Hermia and not her. Okay, so I've used a fragment here. But what of that? Because it actually comes up in the quote that I'm using, but by restating it, I'm showing my reader of my essay what part I'm actually talking about. So using that rhetorical question, it shows the audience that she recognizes that despite their beauty, unfortunately for her, Demetrius still loves Hermia. Through the rhetorical question, the audience sees that Helena is envious of her friend. So this is really important. What is it doing for the audience? At the end of her monologue, her jealousy leads her to go tell him of her flight. And I've put in square brackets here the names of the characters to make it make more sense. So if you need to add in a word or two of your own to make the quote flow in your essay, do that, but put it in square brackets. So I'll read that part again. Through the rhetorical question, the audience sees that Helena is envious of her friend. At the end of her monologue, her jealousy leads her to go tell Demetrius of Hermia's flight. Now, the flight means that she's not taking a plane. Planes didn't exist. It means she's going to run away, okay, to take flight, to run off. So, why does it matter? What's the effect? Well, as Helena wrestles with her jealousy of Hermia and schemes to gain Demetrius's attention, she convinces herself that betraying her friend is worth it if it means winning his love. Not a very good friend here, right? You're betraying your friend for the love of a man who doesn't even love you. Very bad form, Helena. So we need to talk about the cultural assumptions, attitudes, values, beliefs, the norms of the time, okay? So as a result, Helena breaks the vow of friendship. Okay, a vow of friendship. Well, when we're friends with people, we subconsciously sign up to things that means that you're a good friend, right? That's what the vow of friendship is, the things that you do when you're a good friend. Good friends are loyal, they're honest, they're trustworthy, they have your back, they're always there for you. They wouldn't betray you. Okay, so she breaks that, which is a no-no. The cultural norm has been broken. So as a result, Helena breaks the vow of friendship and betrays her best friend by revealing Hermia's secret to Demetrius. Even in Shakespeare's time, Elizabethan audiences would have viewed Helena's behavior as dishonorable and selfish, as they believed that the bonds of friendship should be valued and upheld. See, I'm talking about the behaviors and the values. Through this conflict, Shakespeare reveals the belief that true friendships are built on mutual trust and loyalty, and that these virtues should not be compromised for romantic desire or personal gain. So that's Shakespeare's intention. That's what he's trying to do through showing the cultural assumptions, values, and beliefs. Okay, so it's not just about finding the evidence, analyzing it. You have to link it back to why it matters. What does it show about the time, or what does it show us about the values, attitudes, and beliefs of the characters? Right, and then I link it back, okay, which is the impact on the audience or the reader. So what does it make them feel, see, think, understand about the character, theme, or event? When I say Helena's betrayal ultimately demonstrates how powerful emotions like jealousy and unrequited love can corrupt personal values and undermine even the strongest friendships. Now, if I pull back my topic sentence, Helena and Hermia's friendship is complicated by Helena's behavior. Everything in here links back to that, okay? This is, remember, just the EEA, and then I would write a linking sentence underneath. Okay, so the EEA, again, it is really super important that you understand that you need to do these 4 steps. You must have all of those things to get full marks. What's the technique? How is it used? Either by the director of the film or by the playwright or by the novel writer, whatever it is. What is the effect of the technique? What does it do? What does it show? Can it link to any values, attitudes, and beliefs? Are they reinforced? Are they revealed? Are they challenged? Is it through the character? Is it for the audience's kebabs, or is it the character's kebabs? You can do either. And then importantly, what is the impact on the audience or the reader? So this is a skill you're going to be working on until the end of year 12. Okay, so don't freak out if this is something that you think is really hard. It is something that you are starting with and you're going to continue with throughout your senior English career. Okay, I hope that helps. Thanks.